Hello, welcome to Italics, the Italian-American magazine. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. March 8th is International Women's Day. Here in the United States, March is officially recognized as Women's History Month, dedicated to commemorating and celebrating the innumerable contributions women have made to our shared history and society at large. We dedicate our entire episode of Italics this month to women who have made important contributions to our community. Now let's get to work. First on Italics, we'll meet Dr. Donna Lopiano, former Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Sports Foundation. Founded in 1974 by Billie Jean King, the Women's Sports Foundation is dedicated to advancing the lives of girls and women through sports and physical activity. Dr. Lopiano has been named as one of the 10 most powerful women in sports and also as one of the 100 most influential people in sports. Scholar, athlete, and coach of men's and women's collegiate sports, Donna Lopiano also served as Director of Women's Athletics for the University of Texas for 17 years. We recently met with Dr. Lopiano at the Calandra Institute and spoke about her profound legacy. Next, we'll join the National Organization of Italian American Women at a recent Sunday brunch where they celebrated two distinguished Italian Americans of Westchester County. Now, let's go to the Calandra Institute and meet Dr. Donna Lopiano, pioneer in women's athletics. We're here with Dr. Donna Lopiano, who is the former Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Sports Foundation. You've been a participant in 26 national championships in 4 sports.
In my younger years.
In your younger years, yes. You're a 9-time All-American at 4 different positions in softball. And I remember personally seeing you play in the 70s in Connecticut for the Briquettes. You also played on 6 national championship teams, and you're in various halls of fame. In addition to all of this, you were also the director of the University of Texas Women's Athletics, right? And also past president of the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women.
And the coach of the Italian national women's softball team.
Exactly. Well, let's do one thing. Let's remind our readers for one of your most important activities has been with Title IX. So why don't we let our readers know exactly what Title IX is, because there's a great misunderstanding.
You know, as you know, I grew up on a street with 15 boys and one other girl on Finney Lane in Stamford, Connecticut. And in those days, in the 1950s and 1960s, women were very, very restricted in terms of what they could do. If you were a woman prior to 1972, you could not get into any professional school. You couldn't be a doctor, you couldn't be a lawyer, you couldn't be an MBA student. There were quotas on the number of women, and Title IX was a federal law that passed in 1972 that really opened the doors of higher education for women. It prohibited sex discrimination in institutions that were recipients of federal funds. So it covered all high schools, all colleges and universities, including private colleges and universities, and it opened the doors of economic well-being to women.
To women, right.
And it also covered sports.
Exactly. And that's the greatest myth, right? Because people identify Title IX only with sports.
I know, and it really is amazing. Up until 1972, a woman was able to do any caretaking profession. You could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a social worker, take care of books, you could be a librarian, you could be mom, the ultimate caretaker, but you couldn't get into those professions. But opening up sport was very important because it's the heart of how we've taught young boys in our culture to be self-confident, to be strong, to be leaders, to have high levels of self-esteem, and now the law demanded that we give that same gift to our daughters.
You've written many columns. I'm referring to one on the web from 2002 in which you discuss why football does not need Title IX. When
the football powers to be realized that Title IX applied to sports, they were really afraid of sharing their money with women's sports. And football and men's basketball were the sports that received everything. All men's minor sports received nothing, and of course women's sports received nothing at the time. So there were some real efforts in 1975, 76, 77, 1974 to amend Title IX to exclude football and men's revenue-producing sports. Most notably, the Tower Amendment would have done that. A lot of people believe the myth that football pays for itself. It doesn't. there aren't but 10 schools in the United States, major universities, that are completely self-sufficient in terms of athletics, paying for all of its sports. There are maybe 30 or 40 football programs that pay for themselves. The rest of them don't. And there are 1,895 athletic programs in the United States. So it truly is a myth.
The other myth is that Title IX was responsible for the dropping of various Olympic sports at the college level.
The arms race is responsible for the cutting back of athletics in any way, shape, or form. When you look at the data, NCAA has Division I, the highest competitive division, Division II, Division III. In Division I, the richest schools, the schools with $30 to $50 million athletic budgets, those are the ones that are cutting back on Olympic sports for men, that are trying to cut back on women's sports. Division II and Division III, with sports for 30 or 40 sports per program, are not cutting back. So it really is a myth. It's the big schools are really engaging in this huge arms race, and what they want to do is narrow the expenditure of all of their funds on just one or two sports, which are the revenue-producing sports: men's football, men's basketball.
Football and basketball. Yeah.
And they don't care about the rest of them.
Yeah, Title IX gets blamed for it. About 36 years later, as you look back, with all you've done, both as an athlete, but also as an administrator and as a defender of Title IX, where are we?
We're in a decent place. In 1972, when the law passed, only 1 out of every 27 high school girls played varsity sports. That figure today is 1 in 3, going on 1 in 2.5. For boys, it's 1 in 2. Tremendous progress. But still, when you look at high schools, where 50% of all the students are women, only 42% of all the athletes are women. When you look at colleges, where 56% of all the students are women, there are only 42% of all the women who are playing sports. And that's a direct function of whether you're offering them the opportunity to play. Because if anything's been demonstrated over the past 35 years, it's that if you build it, they will come. If you offer a team, if you give a coach scholarships, there are plenty of young women out there who want to play. But I think the real impact has been on 3, 4 generations of women who are now stronger and healthier and who are being successful in life after sport. It's no accident that 80% of the female executives at Fortune 500 companies self-identify as having played sports. So it's a great investment.
That's a good, I didn't know that. That's a good statistic.
I think the thing that's important is to realize that no male has lost any opportunity to play throughout this 35-year history. You would have thought that the way for schools to comply with Title IX would be to say to men, stop right there, just stay right there and let the women catch up. And what's been really happening is men's participation has continued to grow. The resources that have been given to men the high school and college level have continued to grow, and that gap has still, it's closed somewhat, but it's still very substantial. And it's my guess that we're still another 25 years away from equal opportunity for women.
What about in the coaching arena?
Worst situation there. In the early 70s, about 90% of all the coaches coaching women's teams were women. That was primarily because they didn't get paid. There were PE teachers who were volunteering to, coach because they wanted women to have the chance to play. When money came into sport, and when women's sports went from physical education to the athletic department, which was headed by a male athletic director, you hire people who are just like you. And so jobs became more lucrative, and men got hired. Today, roughly 42% of all the coaches of women's teams are women, and less than 2% of all the coaches of men's teams are women. And that's where the discrimination is, because the highest paying jobs, the most prestigious jobs, are those as coaches of men's teams, and yet we're not hiring women to be those coaches. Yet males are being hired to coach women's teams.
We have one of the best basketball teams in the country. UConn is coached by Gino. Right, exactly.
There's no reason to consider gender as long as you know your sport.
Right. It's not just a gender issue, is it? It's also a race issue.
Absolutely. We're discriminating against women. We're discriminating against persons of color. We're discriminating against individuals with disabilities when it comes to our sport programs. Tell me why there isn't an NCAA national championship in wheelchair basketball. That's not right. 10 to 20% of our students in high school and colleges are kids with disabilities. We should have a Title IX for those kids too. When you look at the issue of race, we see the ghettoization of various sports. The sports that you are more likely to see on television: football, basketball, track, baseball in terms of the participation of Hispanics in baseball. You look at television and you say, oh my God, I think people of color dominate sports or dominate college sports, and it's just exactly the opposite, that they're only playing in those sports that happen to be on television.
That's an interesting
statistic. It really is an indictment that the lower socioeconomic level kid is being precluded from the majority of sports in the United States, and it's getting worse. Here, everybody's concerned about obesity among children, and it's getting worse because the physical activity system for children over the past 10, 15 years has absolutely disintegrated.
It's right, exactly.
You and I, when we were growing up, you came home from school. Came home from school, you took your clothes off, you changed, you took off out of the house. Mom said, come home before the street lights come on. That doesn't happen anymore. Parents are afraid for the safety of their children. They won't put their children outdoors into a sports situation unless it's highly organized. You have to be able to afford it. The average cost of a young child playing sports today is $250 per season. There are a lot of kids who can't afford that. So when you have persons of color who are in lower socioeconomic level classes in larger proportion than whites, then you're going to have less persons of color in the majority of American sports, and that holds true. Think of the Winter Olympics. You can count on one hand the number of persons of color who are representing the United States in the Winter Olympics.
What can we do?
I think at the local level, especially when it comes to neighborhood sports, there has to be outreach. We're coaching our children. I mean, Dad and Mom, you look at your team, and if you're all white, you have to say to yourself, what is going on here? How can I do some outreach? Can I make sure that some other kids are coming by waiving fees, by creating a system where each succeeding class of kids donates their equipment back to younger kids, making sure I play against teams from the inner city. And you have to look at the national sport governing bodies, U.S. Soccer, and say, where are you putting your money? Are you doing something to help this along, to make sure that kids of color are getting seen and getting the opportunity to play?
To go back to our original conversation of Title IX, gender, et cetera, how do you compare the woman athlete of today to the woman athlete of yesteryear?
No comparison.
And by yesteryear,
no comparison. No comparison at all. Up until 1972, the total amount of money spent on scholarships for women each year was about $100,000. Right?
Nationwide.
Nationwide. Wow. And now we're talking about well over $400 or $500 million a year being spent on women's sports.
That's one athlete today, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider it, there are about 3 million girls who are playing high school sports. They're vying for no more than 200,000 slots playing at the college level. But a lot of scholarship money and a lot of bang for your buck in terms of if you're a pretty good athlete, there's a lot at stake.
You were director of women's athletics at a pretty high-powered athletic university.
Hook 'em Horns.
Hook 'em Horns, what were some of the challenges you had to face?
I was the first director of women's athletics at Texas, and in many cases I was really lucky because the program at Texas had a head start on everyone else. It was a fairly lucrative, a rich institution. It supported women's athletics very well, and we were able to show a lot of people, look, you put the same kind of effort into building women's sports, you get top 10 programs, you get national championships, and that makes Texans very happy.
You also did your graduate work at another athletic powerhouse, USC.
Well, yeah, that was not in the era of some pretty good football teams, for sure. Yeah. OJ was there while I was there.
He was. Yeah, I guess in the spirit of fairness, we should say you've mentioned Stamford, Connecticut. We're both from Stamford, Connecticut. I remember seeing you on the Little League field at one point.
You know, I think that's probably the tipping point in my life, that I grew up on a street with 15 boys. I was picked #1 in the draft in the Mickey Leone Little League. Mickey Leone Park was right off of Stillwater Avenue. Yeah. And we were lined up to get our uniforms, and this father, came, showed me the Little League rule book that said no girls are allowed. Wasn't able to do the thing I most loved doing. And I think since that time, I've been fanatical about any child. You never tell a child that you cannot pursue your dreams. I mean, that takes the heart out of a child, whether they're boys or girls. So my parents looked forever for a chance for me to play. And finally, my father realized that his good old Army buddy, a fellow named Sal Caginello, who was a scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates, was best friends with the coach of the national championship Rebecca's Breakettes women's softball team. Right. And my father, invited him down to this, our family had a restaurant, fed him a bottle of Chianti. He agreed to take me sight unseen to a tryout. Came to pick me up one Saturday morning and did not talk to me the entire ride up to Stratford.
Now, you were in high school, or you were
I was in high school.
You were in high school.
I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And he didn't talk to me. He was afraid of his reputation was going to be sullied here. Yeah. Exactly. And so he introduced me to the coach, and then he went out to the outfield to sit in his car. He was ready to watch the Devico from a distance. And as he saw that I was a really good player, he got out of his car, he stood at the outfield fence, and then he stood at the third baseline fence, and by the end of the tryout, he was sitting in the dugout, and Coach Devitt had his arm around him saying, "Sal, you're the best." And I continued to remind him up until his death that he discovered me in the bottom
that was the turning point of your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you went to Southern Connecticut, and at Southern Connecticut, which was then Southern Connecticut State College.
I was a physical education major and fully intended to be a coach, and then decided that I wanted to be a boss of coaches. So I went on for my master's and my PhD, and then went to Brooklyn College for 4 or 5 years. I started the volleyball program at Brooklyn, and I'll never forget, it was the best experience of my life. We had practice at 7 o'clock in the morning. My kids had to get on the subway at 5 o'clock in the morning to make it to practice. And that first team, we went to the national championships for the very first time, won the region, and went to Portland, Oregon for a national collegiate championships. But I still communicate with those kids.
And it was probably the first time most of those kids, if not all, had probably gotten on a plane.
First time they had ever gotten on an airplane. Yeah. They were mostly kids of color. They were a great group, though. They were just absolutely a great group.
And you were there for 5 years?
I was, and then went on to Texas.
And then went on to Texas. So you went from Brooklyn College to Texas.
That's right. Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah, Yankees weren't that welcome back in the South, too. But it was fun. It was fun because Texas, it's everything that you would think it is. It's bigger than big. They want to be national champions, and they'll do whatever it takes to win and
but
to be the best.
But it's also a nice little city, though. Austin is
Austin's
a really
great town.
Yeah. It's
great town, great barbecue.
One of those liberal college towns, a la Ann Arbor, and so on and so forth. Yeah. What about your Italian background?
My family was my mother and father were first generation Italian Americans, and they grew up with a fanatical commitment to education. And the deal was with all of their children, you are going to college. No ifs, ands, or buts. This was the first generation of Italian Americans who wanted to give their children everything that America had to offer. And it always amazed me that I wasn't pressured to conform to a female stereotype. You would think that in the 50s, that you would get that out of Italian parents. But remember that this was, my mom worked during the war, so she worked the factories. My dad was you know, a staff sergeant, and neither of my parents were graduates of high school because the Depression and the war just you know, hit them right at that time. So all the kids went to college, and you know, that was their legacy, education.
And I've looked through some of the books that you've written, and one of the books that I think you co-authored is on the 100 top female athletes, I think it is. And so as I was looking through, you know, I saw names such as Betty Trezza and Gina Satriano and Ginny Capicchioni, whatever. You know, the first, I think, is baseball. And actually,
Betty
she's
just
of a previous generation. She goes back to the 40s, right? She goes back to the 40s.
She played in, Betty Trezza played in the All-American Girls Baseball League. It's amazing.
I think I remember she said she was making $37 a week in a factory, and somebody came and offered her $50 a week to play baseball, and she jumped on it.
Unbelievable stories. And Satriano, he was able to play at a very narrow window of opportunity part of time. There was a promoter who started the Colorado Silver Bullets women's professional baseball team that toured around barnstorming, playing men's minor league teams. And so here there was a group of these baseball playing women who for 3 or 4 years were able to play the game. But once that opportunity disappeared, there's no promotion of women in baseball now. That might change. I think we're going to see more and more women participating in what we now consider to be non-traditional sports for women, simply because there are no limits.
Who are some of the people you've worked with along the way that when you were 15 or 16 you never thought you would meet, let alone work work alongside?
As I was growing up, my heroes were all men, because I did not know women played until I saw the Olympic Games in the 50s. All I knew were male baseball players. Mickey Mantle was my hero, Don Larson, you know, all of those. And as I got older, I mean, the people that I've had a chance to work with, Billy obviously is one, but even people like, you know, Gina Davis, who played the catcher in a league of their own, who would have been a great athlete had anyone ever encouraged her to play. At the age of 42, takes up archery and is ranked within 1 year as number 11 in the United States, just missing the Olympic trials. You know, there's a whole generation of women there who, if they ever had the chance. You have a column that talks about fee or free, and you say, if your agent says you always need to ask for a fee, fire the agent. And I think, you want to speak to that a little bit? Sure. I mean, we all have an obligation to give back. If we're fortunate enough to earn a living from sports, or even to earn the right to have a great coach or college athletic scholarship, then we have to pay it forward. We have to give back. And so I've always said to every athlete, what are you doing for the young girl coming up? And you should do that for free. That shouldn't be about money, and it should be at least a quarter of your life.
Great. Well, we appreciate your visit. We hope to have you back at some time in the future. Good. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay. Next, we'll join the National Organization of Italian American Women at a recent Sunday brunch where they celebrated Italian Americans of Westchester County by honoring 2 outstanding residents. Westchester District Attorney Janet DiFiore is the first Italian American woman to hold that post. In addition, NOIAW bestowed their Special Service Recognition Award to Dr. Vincenzo Zuccarelli.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to our celebration of Westchester County as we honor 2 very distinguished and prominent members of the Italian American community. Today, you're also going to have the opportunity to learn more about NOIAW, our programs and our cultural activities and our mission.
The monies we raise at these events fund our scholarship program, which has distributed over $100,000 in scholarships and grants over the last 25 years. This year, we are pleased to be doubling the amount of each scholarship, which is available to young women of Italian-American descent throughout the country. This past summer, we initiated a cultural exchange program for young women of college age. NOIAW hosted 18 students from all over Italy last summer, where they were guests of, here in the New York area, where they were guests of members in this New York City area. This year, as part of the exchange, we will send our students to Italy for a reciprocal cultural, professional, and educational experience. I sincerely hope that everyone here decides to join today. The National Organization of Italian American Women is now open to men and women, Italian or Italophile. We'd love to welcome you as part of our family and to join us in our continued commitment to keeping our culture alive.
I ask you to use all your influence to have an important success in a program which is called AP program, Advancement Placement Program. It's very useful for young students at the end of the high school. They can gain important credits in the college and in the university doing an exam. And we have to make pressure to the schools in order to have more classes of Italian and to have more classes offering the AP program.
We never had the AP program until 4 or 5 years ago. But we worked for 4 years to get the language. And we're in crises because not too many kids are taking it, and the College Board will drop us. We need all of you to go out. Please promote this, because that's why the Consul General does his job so well, and we thank him immensely that he feels for this, because we mustn't lose our AP program.
He's a very busy man, busy doing for others, particularly young people, and his favorite cause is education. He has a doctorate of literature and philosophy from Italy and was a teacher of classical languages before coming to the U.S. In our 28-year history, we have honored only about 4 men. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present our award for service to the Italian American community to Vincenzo Zuccarelli.
I am especially grateful and honored to be here. I thank every one of you present in this room for giving me the opportunity to work for you, for your young students and their education, and for promoting the Italian language and culture.
Janet DiFiore has dedicated her career to public service as both a former judge and prosecutor in Westchester County. She served for more than 10 years as an assistant district attorney. She was elected as a judge of the Westchester County Court in 1998 and as a justice of the New York State Supreme Court in 2002.
Let's all hope that this is the start of a very strong presence of the National Organization of Italian American Women here in Westchester County, where 40% of the residents in our community self-identify as people of Italian heritage. There are some things in life that do remain constant and do stand the test of time. And I believe that one of those things is the Italian American woman, the centerpiece of our families, the model of strength and dignity and courage and hospitality and beauty. Our women, and I think even all the men will agree here, our women are exceedingly feminine on every level, but our women have never been afraid to stand up and fight for what's right and good in our communities and for our rightful place at the table, whether that's the kitchen table or whether it's the conference table in a corporate setting.
The Calandra Institute is proud to announce an international conference on Italians in the Americas, taking place on April 25th and 26th, featuring scholars and subjects from the entire Italian diaspora. An opening reception will be held on the evening of April 24th. The conference is free and open to the public. All events will be held at the Calandra Italian American Institute, located at 25 West 43rd Street in Midtown Manhattan, 17th floor. Space is limited. Please RSVP. For more information, call 212-642-2094 or go to our website, www.qc.edu/Calandra.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching Italics. Please join us again next month. I'm Anthony Tamburri. Arrivederci alla prossima puntata. See you next time.